Hello again. I remember back in the 1960s when homosexual acts between men were legalised in Britain, at least in private. I was a teenager at the time and I thought it the most marvellous and progressive piece of legislation. All of the same category as legalising abortion and pornography. The struggle to free the country from the last vestiges of Victorian prudishness. This would show the old fogies. Of course, being myself an old fogey now, I have a slightly different perspective. When moves were afoot to make homosexuality legal, one objection raised was that older men would use this as license to interfere with young boys, and that legalising homosexuality would, in effect, mean lifting the prohibition on pederasty and paedophilia. This sounded outrageous to us young folk. Why should gay men be more likely to target boys than heterosexual men would young girls? I might mention that in the 60s, interfering with boys was a very popular pastime for some teachers, choir masters, and people working with Boy Scouts, cadet forces, and other youth organisations. Some girls were doubtless abused by older men, swimming coaches, and so on, but it was not, I think, nearly as widespread and common as homosexual paedophilia. I wonder if any older viewers have the same recollection. This might simply be that girls on the whole went to things like guides and that the adults associated with them were women rather than men, and women are generally less likely to exhibit paedophile tendencies. In the event, sex between gay men was legalised, and it didn't cause a huge rise in paedophilia, at least as far as the statistics may be relied upon. There has though always been a strand of thought within the gay community which holds that there can be something noble and good in an older man forming a physical relationship with a youth, somebody just past boyhood. The ancient Greeks were often mentioned as a beautiful instance of this kind of love. I need hardly mention that there is something similar among heterosexuals, which is the idea of the Lolita figure. From the St. Trinian's films onwards, the sexualised schoolgirl has been a popular figure in Britain. Lately, though, I've seen more active endorsement of the idea of what sounds to me like homosexual paedophilia from very prominent spokesmen for gays in this country, people like Peter Tatchell. In the description to this video, I give a link to a brief clip in which he talks of a relationship between a 9-year-old boy and an adult. He says that because when this boy grew up, he had no regrets about what had happened when he was 9, and that he thinks he gave his consent to what occurred, that we should accept that 9-year-old boys are capable of making informed choices about whether they have sex with grown-ups. I will mention that I myself was molested as a boy, as were a number of my school friends, and I didn't object at the time. It would be absurd, though, to say that I consented in the same way that an adult could consent to a sexual relationship. For one thing, the power imbalance between teachers and schoolboys, scoutmasters and scouts and so on, is so great as to make this kind of thing automatically a form of sexual exploitation. Fully to appreciate what Peter Tatchell is saying here in the clip, perhaps we should forget the homosexual aspect and ask ourselves what we would think if somebody advanced this argument in relation to a 9-year-old girl and a grown man. If anybody asserted that a 9-year-old girl was capable of giving informed consent to sexual activity with a grown-up, we would most of us recoil in horror and see this as a justification for paedophilia. Is the case altered simply because this is a homosexual encounter?